listening to The Alex Pierson Show.
So this is one of those conversations that really started it started when the ruling came down from the Supreme Court on the issue of mandatory minimums when it comes to sex offenders. And a whole year for a duo out of Montreal who exchanged hundreds and hundreds of images. Too much, says our Supreme Court. And of course, we've been talking about it. And then since then, Pierre Poilievre came out right away and said, well, yeah, I mean, I would use the notwithstanding clause when it comes to crimes against children. Yeah, we need to go beyond the extra mile if the courts get it wrong. Doug Ford saying the same thing. Wab Kinew, he's a progressive, saying the same thing. And then it's puzzling because then Sean Fraser, the Justice Minister, comes out and says, well, I wouldn't use the notwithstanding clause. I don't need it. Right? And it's like, well, really? I mean, you can't go after sex offenders, children? Nonetheless, this is not going to be going away, and this is an issue that got before, one of the committees in Ottawa. And I want you to hear this audio of Andrew Lawton, who is the MP for Elgin St. Thomas, London South. And I think as much as we look at the politics of it, here's a politician that wants to look at the actual crime and what it does.
I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. And to my knowledge, there are no photos or videos of that. And I hope that will end up being true. Child sexual exploitation and abuse material does not exist on a computer screen with the person who possesses it only. There are victims, hundreds of victims of this. There is a market for this. The government needs to send the strictest possible penalty, the strongest possible message in denouncing this. This should not be a partisan issue. This should be something that every member of this committee, Liberal, Bloc, and Conservative, can support, regardless of what the Minister of Justice has said on this, that we call on the House to do the right thing and protect children. Yeah.
I mean, look, I've covered a lot of these kinds of trials, and they are absolutely devastating. Any child who has been abused by an adult, I mean, their lives are just shattered, right? It's not a consequence-free crime. And that is why a lot of people are pushing back on Sean Fraser, because he's saying, look, the way forward is better legislation with harsher penalties. But we've seen in time that does not seem to ever happen. I want to bring in the person saying that particular message. He is the MP for the area of Elgin St. Thomas, London. His name, Andrew Lawton. Good to have you.
Hey, good to talk to you again, Alex. Thanks for having me.
This is one of those particular issues where, you have spoken from your own experience, and probably once upon a time, you didn't think that this would ever become a public conversation for yourself, but you're willing to put that conversation out to make sure that people understand you're talking from experience. And so take me through as to why you were speaking at committee and what is it that you're hoping will happen?
Well, I didn't even know that I was going to be talking about what I did yesterday until it came out of my mouth. I mean, this was a conversation we were having because we had on the Justice Committee put forward, the Conservative members, a motion calling on the government to reintroduce the mandatory minimum for child sexual exploitation and abuse material, and to do so with the notwithstanding clause so that it would be upheld in the wake of this Supreme Court ruling. And, as we were talking about this, it became so apparent that so much of the government's response has been to have these really abstract discussions about charter rights without talking about the victims, without acknowledging that there are victims. And, this is a case, the two cases in the Supreme Court ruling were men who had hundreds of images and videos of children being abused in unspeakable ways. And that is hundreds of victims, people who were victimized by those images being captured and by the actions that were captured in those images. And I wanted to really just share that there is a human face to this issue, and that we need to send that strong message and cut off the demand for these images and videos which circulate among these dirtbags and perverts.
Well, look, I mean, it's one of those crimes that I will not ever be convinced that it's curable. And I've covered far too many of these types of crimes to know that it's a revolving door where you get, suspects or quote unquote monsters who just keep going in and out of the court system over and over and over again, not for short periods of time, but throughout their lifetime. And so it's just this sequence of just reoffend. And then, by the end, we see this long trail of destruction. And so I'm very curious to know what laws in place is Sean Fraser planning to bring in that will actually start to address the laws and actually protect the charter rights of children, because I'm not sure why we just do not treat these kinds of crimes seriously at all and never have.
No, and this is the thing. I mean, what a lot of the people opposed to what I and my conservative colleagues are trying to do on restoring the mandatory minimum with the notwithstanding clause, what they like to cite is that, the Supreme Court wasn't talking about these guys. They were talking about this hypothetical scenario in which an 18-year-old has a photo of his 17-year-old girlfriend, and in that case, we wouldn't want to put a 1-year penalty. But I go back to the case that began this whole court hearing, and the two men in Montreal were actually given by the judge the bare minimum. They were given the bare minimum. They were given a 3-month conditional sentence that they could serve, at their convenience on weekends, and then a 9-month prison sentence because the judge said that they were remorseful. So this is a judge who was only going by the minimum because they had to, and would have actually done something far less severe had that not been there. And that is why the mandatory minimum exists, because you have these activist judges that to treat these heinous dirtbags with leniency.
So where do things stand now with this particular piece of legislation? Is Fraser going to be open to discussing, what they're going to bring forward? Where does it stand, if not just that he's not going to use the notwithstanding?
We were expecting our motion on committee yesterday to be something that we could dispense with very quickly, back to other work that we were doing. Instead, we saw the Liberal members run the clock on the meeting, and we got to the end of it with this motion being amended, and then we sub-amended, and the Liberals trying to strip it. All of the things gave it teeth. They wanted to take out the reference to the notwithstanding clause from our motion, and they also wanted to take out that we want this motion to go before the House. The Liberals, believe it or not, in that meeting said, well, why don't we just send a strongly worded letter to Sean Fraser, letting him know we'd like some sort of action. So we are going to be picking this issue up when we reconvene. We are in our constituencies next week for Remembrance Day, but the week following at the Justice Committee, because this is crucially important. The Liberals are saying they take it seriously, but they are not yet meeting this with action and showing us a very clear path on how they are going to put legislation that will undo this despicable Supreme Court ruling that puts the rights of pedophiles above the rights of children.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on this. Just before I let you go, and because you got a background in radio, I'll ask. I should point out, you did manage to get on the show. You just voted in another confidence vote at which the Carney government has survived. So that happened new in the last few minutes, correct?
Yeah, just literally just right before I dialed, I cast my ballot.
Okay, so we're not going to an election right this second. But I'd also ask, because obviously it's been a week, you've lost one for now, one MP and teammate as well. Another will be resigning. What's the feeling around there? Is there a concern over Poilievre's leadership? What's the conversation like behind closed doors?
Look, our caucus is very much united behind Pierre Poilievre. The issues we all ran on to tackle, issues of affordability and crime, are still front and center issues. I still think we owe it to our constituents individually and to the country to be moving for action and results on that. We have been, I can say 100%, I am not joining the Liberal caucus.
Shocking.
I have not been invited,
I thought for sure this afternoon you were going to cross. I was like, for sure Lawton's going.
Yeah, but in all honesty, we are a united front, and I try not to get swept up in the rumors that go around Ottawa. We have a very important job to do, and we can't let ourselves get distracted from that. And this issue that we're talking about regarding child sexual exploitation and abuse material, like that's where I'm focusing my efforts, because these are things where I need to be able to make a difference, and we should be able to put aside partisan differences.
We should. Let's see if that happens. Appreciate your time on this.
Always a pleasure, Alex. Thank you.
There you go. That is MP Andrew Lawton. And, of course, we will watch and see what happens with that particular issue, because it's a big one.